Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of the Let's Talk Live conversations for 2021. I hope you've all had a great Christmas break wherever you are. And here we are still in the pandemic, but with slightly more hopeful news around vaccines and also new medications. So hopefully 2021 will prove a little bit more positive than 2020. And joining us for the first of these conversations is, first of all, Ella Barrington, who's an engineer and runs her own consultancy business. Ella joined Brit on a conversation way back last year, one of the first conversations we had that we recorded. And also joining us today is Alejandro Garcia, who's actually calling in from Mexico. So Alejandro, thank you for getting up at whatever it is, 3 o'clock in the morning and joining us. But it's fabulous to see you. And Alejandro is the team leader for the Oxford Brookes University racing team. So we're going to hear a bit more about that because both he and Ella are connected in engineering of fast cars, for one thing, and maybe talking about the future of electrics as well. And then with us, as so is often the case, we've got Brit and we've got Anne. And so if you want to join in the conversation, if you want to ask a question, we'll be monitoring the chat line on YouTube. Do please feel free to take part. We'll try and answer any questions you've got. But if not, just sit back, enjoy the conversation for the next half hour, and then do feel free to comment about it on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram. But anyway, welcome. So let's kick off. Alejandro, could you just tell us a little bit about what you and your team get up to? Because it sounds fascinating, and I know you've won lots of awards, been in the press, you know, you're well known all over the world for racing car design. So tell us a bit about it.
Morning, Matthew. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So at Oxford Brookes Racing, we're part of a competition called Formula Student. It's an international design competition in which every university team has the goal of designing from scratch and then manufacture and then race a single-seater race car across a set of events, all sort of events. All of this is 100% student work. There are over 40 teams in the UK, over 1,000 teams worldwide. And all of these competitions are held all over the world. We've been in places like America, like I'm pretty sure Ella can tell you a lot about it later on. We've been in a lot of places in Europe. Some of these events are held in Formula One tracks, it just adds to a great experience. It's a great opportunity for students to take what they learn in the classroom and take it to a more of a hands-on experience. And it's a good way to actually achieve experience in a race team before graduation. So yeah, it's a great experience.
So how many people do you have working with you in your team?
So this year we actually beat our record and we recruited 280 people.
Wow. And all from the university or from other walks of life as well?
They are all from the university, but something special about Oxford Brookes, which is one of the reasons I joined, is that it allows students from any year, any background, it doesn't matter what course you're studying, you're welcome to join the team. We have people that are studying business, marketing, journalism, and it just proves that when you go out to industry and you join the racing team, you don't just have engineers, you have people from all sorts of background, because that's the way the real world operates. And it's the experience that we want to build within our students from day one.
It sounds fascinating. So Ella, how do you fit into all of this?
So I am an alumni of this very team. So I did my Master of Science at Oxford Brookes in 2007 to 2008. So I'm sure it seems a very long time ago for Alessandro, but to me it's a fresh memory still. And I did my Masters there and I was part of the Formula Student team. And now I've come full circle. I'm part of the associate lecturing team in the School of Engineering, Computing and Maths. So I teach business and management to engineering students. And I also kind of work as an informal advisor to the team, because outside of that, I work with a lot of motorsport and automotive companies. And one of the things that I really got from doing Formula Student was around knowing how the real world and business really works. And I think that was one of the pivotal experiences, was doing that and realizing that actually I loved that bit as much as I loved the actual engineering element. So actually it's a real privilege to be able to come back and bring that kind of real professional experience and up-to-date industry knowledge into the teaching and help them get the most out of both the academic work and Formula Student, because Formula Student is extracurricular. And I think that's something that you don't often get to see from the outside, is that this is all student driven. It's, you know, it has support from the faculty. There's a space in the building and we're there to make sure that nobody cuts their finger off or offends a sponsor, but it is all clean sheet for students, by students. And that's a really amazing experience to get at such a young age. When I came to Brookes, I was fortunate enough that I was already working with professional motorsport teams at the weekend during the holidays. But actually, I thought that would be really easy to just come and do Formula Student. It's just another way of going racing. And actually, when all of a sudden you're the leaders, you're the managers and the leaders, and that's a completely different experience. Things like, as Alejandro said, I got to go to America as part of it. Silly things like, we'd never packed a shipping container before. We were just a load of students throwing our hard work into a shipping container. And when we opened it at the other end, it was in more pieces than it started life. And actually learning to kind of get through that together was a really formative experience for me. So I'm really happy to come back and be part of it again.
So Alejandro, what are some of the leadership, what are some of the challenges, not so much the engineering challenges, we'll perhaps get onto those a bit later, but what are some of the leadership challenges that you face?
Well, a lot of them come to my mind. It's going to be hard to choose specific ones, but I guess it's a completely different job to manage not just parts, but to manage people. I think we have a very strong mission statement, which is to develop versatile graduates able to excel in a high-performance team and to build a multi-year legacy. And we sort of drive all of our leadership to accomplish this. So every decision that we make, every structure that we build within the team, we want to do it to build all of our members, to build all of our students. So it comes a lot about guiding the team through a path that is going to be beneficial for everyone's development. So we want to mainly develop the tools and the experiences and the learning with each one of our students that is basically going to prepare them for when they go to industry. So give them all of the necessary learning and tools for when they go out to the world and they work in the places where they want to work.
What are the barriers, Alejandro, to you doing that? What have you noticed? There's obviously a lot going for you, but what are the biggest things that you have to get over in terms of providing that experience that's optimum for people?
It probably is, we usually recruit very ambitious people because as Ella mentions, it's all extracurricular. So you have very driven people that have all sorts of goals and different mindsets. So it's sort of aligning all of these goals and sometimes customizing their own experience within the team to meet what they actually want to learn and what they actually want to accomplish. Because you might have someone that is very interested in working in Formula One as an engineer, someone that is interested in working in Formula One as a manager, or someone that is just after a journalism experience, is not really interested in motorsport. They just want to get a journalism experience and work with our social media. So it's mainly like building a platform that is flexible enough to have all sorts of students and is able to give everyone what they actually want.
I suppose you've got to, got to balance that enthusiasm with also there's some reality in it as well, isn't there? But not stamp on people's enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are so many ways that we can think outside the box that it actually enables us to be very flexible with what we do things. And in so many ways, we let people like just not be limited with their imagination and just take their roles wherever they want to take them. and we pretty much are the owners of our own roles, so we can get to think outside the box in everything that we do, and be creative and innovate as much as we can with everything that we do, from designing a part to our social media platforms. So it's a great project to be very flexible about what we can do.
And Ella, I mean, you've now immersed yourself for 10 years or so in this from a sort of commercial perspective, and working and providing support to companies. Now, I've met one ex-Formula One racing manager. I'm not going to mention his name. And I've seen a few others interviewed over the years, and they're to me, they strike me a little bit like sort of racehorse trainers who run successful racehorse studs and livery stables. They're not the easiest of people necessarily to rub along with. You know, they're quite opinionated, they're quite forthright. They call a spade and a shovel. So how do you manage? You know, what are the sort of leadership challenges for you? You know, in the world that you inhabit, in influencing these people and working with them.
It's a very very good observation there, Matthew. Yes, everybody, not everybody, but the vast majority of people go into motorsport because they're excited by it. It's their passion. You know, everybody at Brookes is very rosy-eyed about it, and you know, it's such a hard job to do. It's relentless hours, it's lots of travel, it's being away from your family, it's, you know, particularly when you're a driver, it's putting yourself out there every weekend for potential injury, worse, at best criticism constantly on social media. It's a really rough place to be, so you have to want to do it. And so you do get quite a lot of similar personality types, and I think this actually was something that I probably first noticed when I was at Brookes. You get a lot of very forceful, very kind of alpha personalities, and actually learning how to be yourself within that is something I had to adjust to quite quickly. And it continues to be an evolving thing for all of us. And I think also the industry is changing quite a lot as well. When I came into it first as a fresh-faced graduate, I think the way I dealt with those kind of demanding people was I just behaved like them. You know, that's the truth of it. I went, right, that's how we have to be. We have to be swearing at everybody. We have to be shouting. We have to be rough and drink a lot. And, you know, that's it. It's fun. It's banter, you know, go for it. And actually, I think that it's changed quite a lot now. And I see it in the students at Brookes. You know, they are more sensitive. They are and not sensitive in a bad way, because again, I think Generation Z can get a bit of a hard rap for being a little bit mollycoddled, but they talk about mental health, they treat each other with respect, they're concerned about the planet and society and politics in a way that I think actually in 2008 we weren't really. We were quite single-minded because the world was in a better place. And actually, I think over my time of working with all these people is actually kind of settling down into yourself and going, you know what, I've proved myself, I continue to prove myself, and I'm okay being who I want to be, and being, and in my case, I'm more of a servant leader. You know, I want to help people get stuff done. I have less of an ego, and perhaps that's why I knew I didn't want to go into a Formula One team, because it is more of an ego-driven environment, and actually that's not for me. I would prefer to be in more of a collaborative space, which is why I went and worked in sports cars, where it's much smaller. It's more of a, not a family feel, but you have more of an impact, and there's less of a hierarchy. Yeah. And I now know that suits me, and I suit that. So yeah, you do have to go and experience some of those hard knocks, I think, to kind of come out and find where you sit in terms of leaders you work with and the leader you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes talk in the work that Anne and Britt and I do about how important challenging assignments are. You know, how actually when you look back on parts of your life, you've probably learned most about yourself and also about other people when things have been particularly tough or challenging for you. So Alejandro, you might not agree with that, but you know, can you give us an idea, obviously without telling too many sort of confidential insights, but you know, what are some of the most challenging things for you as a young leader, you know, that you deal with, and things you've just had to sort of either bite your tongue on and say, right, I'll just, as Ella said, you know, I'll just go with that, I'll accept it, but I'm comfortable. So what are some of the things that you've had to deal with as a young leader?
Well, again, many things come to my mind, and I think there are different sort of challenges that build different sorts of learning or experience in the leaders that well, are part of the team. Because I can think of, for example, technical challenges that 1 week before competition we break our chassis, and we have 1 week to fix it, and it's a carbon fiber chassis, so it's not like the simplest thing to rebuild. And you might see people's hopes coming down, or just absolute chaos and despair about not knowing what we're going to do because competition is around the corner. And that really shows a lot of different aspects of people, because you need to push them into motivate them and seeing the purpose of pulling all-nighters to get the thing back up together. But then there's other types of challenges, like for example in this year that we just lived in 2020, with having to recruit everyone online, having to work on a virtual basis. And you deal with things like people's loneliness, or people not feeling very included in the team because they're just miles away from the other side of the world behind a screen. Or you have to deal with people potentially not seeing another phase in months. And OBR is the only thing that they've got apart from their studies, because they don't really have the time to socialize, because there just isn't an allowance to do so. So it's a lot about giving our part as leaders to give them as much as we can from our side to feel included in the team and to feel part of something great. That's why we have shown a lot of flexibility in the things that we do. And we're just trying to think outside the box in so many different things. So for example, this year, we started a new thing called OBR Learning, because we know that there's a lot that you learn outside the classroom, and there's a lot that you learn outside the OBR meetings. And this you learn by just being around each other, having normal conversations on the hallway. Someday an alumni like Helen might just pop into the campus, and you can hear about their experience in industry. And we try to replicate this on a virtual basis. So every week we're holding about 3 or 4 sessions that are dedicated just to teach people things. So we're teaching them how to do CAD, how to do a business proposal, how to do FEA, how to do CFD. And then we have guest talks as well. So every week we invite alumni to have conversations, casual conversations with our students, because we know that our students want to be in places that our alumni are right now. So we get to ask them, how did you get there? What experience did you live? What decisions did you make? How was your application process? And give them that side of things that you just can't get in the lecture room, and you can't get in the OBR meetings. You just get in the environment. So it's a lot about thinking outside the box to care about everyone's well-being, to care about everyone's development. And yeah, I think as leaders is the most important thing to us, really.
And Britt, it's interesting because, you know, just listening to what Alejandro has just said, you could say we could replicate that in the comments that people have made on all of the virtual workshops that we've been involved with over the last, well, certainly over the last 9 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and that's with more senior people very often, and they struggle with exactly the same challenges. And I think to some extent, I mean, what you said, Matthew, about learning in hardship, and Ella, you referred to it as well. We know that we learn when the going gets tough. It just strikes me as particularly tough for young leaders at the moment to have to juggle all of that at the same time, you know, to do your own learning, your professional learning, if I may call it that, and then at the same time make sure that everybody is okay. But at the same time, it's a wonderful opportunity to be aware of that so young in your careers. And I think it will hopefully stand you in good stead going forward, because we have no idea what lies ahead of us. But somehow we don't think it will be so easy. But at least you're armed in terms of looking after each other.
Yeah. Now, Ella, I visited a Formula One team a few years ago to do a little bit of development work with their senior leadership team. And one of the senior guys said to me, Matthew, you've got to understand, this is a totally different business to one you've ever been in before. So I said, yeah, I know nothing about Formula One. And he said, I have a budget of 100 million euros to spend every year. I don't need to make a profit. I don't need to do anything other than spend the 100 million and make sure the car is a little better than it was last year. That's my only key performance indicator. The car has got to be better next year than it was last year. And I said, fascinating. So where's the motivation for you as a leader? You know, if that's all you've got to do, and there's no one breathing down your neck about profit and about margins, anything like that. And he said, it's actually motivating the 110 people I have working for me to be involved in, to sort of take part of themselves and really get into this. And Alejandro, I could imagine that, you know, you've got 280 in your team. How do you deal with failure? You know, what happens if your car doesn't come first, or the main axle does break and you can't get it fixed, or you've spent 100 million, but the car's no better this year than it was last year? I mean, how as leaders do you deal with that? I mean, Ella, you must have situations where occasionally things don't work out. So how do you deal with that?
I think one of the things you have to adjust very quickly to when you work for a team, as opposed to in the kind of engineering supply chain, is there is only one winner every weekend. So the vast majority of your working life, you're not going to win. And that's actually a bit of a culture shock, because you don't sit there during doodling racing cars as a kid going, I am going to finish 4th to 6th for most of my life, or actually I'm going to finish 22nd. You just don't imagine it like that. But that is the brutal reality of it. You know, in Formula One at the moment, we've got Mercedes who are obviously, you know, at a, well, I don't think they're at the end. I think they're at the midpoint of an incredibly dominant run, and success breeds success. It breeds motivation. You know, when you get a bonus payment for every point you get, and you get a lovely big Christmas party, and you all get to hold the trophy, you know, that it's easy to motivate people at that point. Actually, I worked for a team who we were brand new. I joined today. We got 3 fresh cars and a fresh set of people, and got told to go making a racing team. We were awful, to be honest. We were awful for at least 6 months. We didn't know what we were doing. And some of that was getting used to technology. Some of that was getting used to each other. Actually, some people weren't the right fit. We didn't know how to work for each other. And again, it is a really hard experience, but you have to learn from it. And I think, again, coming back to kind of like that personality types thing, to have got as far to work in professional motorsport, you have to have shown a real resilience, because it, you know, academically, you know, engineering is not the easiest degree by a long shot. You know, when I remember turning up for my first week of my mechanical engineering degree, I lived with girls that had 3 hours a week, and I had 40. My freshers week at Leeds, we had maths exams during freshers week, so I didn't go out for the whole of freshers week. And I did think, really should have done a communications degree. This would be a lot more fun. You know, you've had to get this real grit to get as far. And there's also, you know, a lot of people that want to do it. I imagine it's similar to working in other sports or in the arts, of just a lot of people hold this lofty dream, and to have got as far as being onto a team, you're going to have been knocked back a lot of times. You're going to have got into that 1%. So you are a generally self-motivated person, but it can also be really hard during that period of time with our team, where we actually got to the point where we were really pleased if we finished a race. And actually, Yeah, you have to kind of set your, I think when you know you're in those kind of situations, you do have to kind of take the small joys where you have, and we'd actually become so happy that we'd scored a point rather than winning a race. So you have to learn to adjust your own expectations. You also have to learn about your own limitations, I think. If you, a lot of it does have to do with how much that budget is that you need to spend. You know, there may be somebody that has more money, has a faster driver. You know, again, there's a lot of external factors that you can't always manage or lead your way out of, that you have to do your best with, and also on a personal level then learn to step back and go, that's the best we could do with the information and the situation we had at the time. I went into sports cars, and a lot of sports car racing is actually a professional amateur series, a bit like you get with golf. So there will be a wealthy amateur who funds, and they drive alongside a young, enthusiastic junior sportsman, who, or woman, unfortunately they are mostly men, and actually, again, a big adjustment is going, okay, this man pays my wages, but he may not necessarily have the sporting talent to achieve what we can give him. And actually, that, again, that's quite an adjustment that you have to make as a collective team and an individual professional, of going, that still means I've done a really good job. We might not have won, but I'm really satisfied that that was the best we could do under the circumstance. And also in racing, there's a lot of external factors that happen on the track. It can start to rain just after you've made a pit stop. You know, things, yeah, people can hit you, and again, you have to learn this kind of resilience and install that in your team to keep going, because otherwise, yeah, you're never gonna get to the end of the year, really.
And what do you do with people who are particularly disappointed? I can imagine there must be we know in psychology there's a whole range of, a whole distribution, if you like, different personalities and different reactions. I mean, how do you deal with one or two, the person in the team who's struggling more than others, say? What do you do with that?
I think this approach is possibly still evolving. I think certainly people who are in teams who are much older than me, they wouldn't show it. You know, that they'd maybe go up to their room and punch a pillow or have a good cry, but they'd come back down, and by the time you were flying home, we'd moved on to the next race. Doesn't matter. I think some of my sort of millennial generation are maybe starting those conversations of saying, actually, that's really hard, and I miss home, and that's not the result we wanted. And I think we're maybe more we talk about it a bit more, and we're more supportive of each other. And again, maybe technology makes that easier for us, because we can WhatsApp each other, or we can Skype home. I remember when I first started traveling, the excitement of being able to Skype my boyfriend when I was in Australia. Like, a couple of years before that, you wouldn't have been able to do that. You would have just been away. So I think we are more communicative. But then I see even more of an expression from the people who are coming behind me. They are posting regularly about well-being, mental health, the challenges they're going through, how they're supporting each other, and also being active for change within the industry, and being more realistic about the hard points. Last year was the first time there was quite a lot actually in our kind of industry press. A few people really stood up and said, it started with a press officer from a Formula One team wrote an article that he self-published on his blog that said, actually, I have sat in my hotel room and I have thought about ending it all, because this is so hard for me. And actually, the overwhelming support and people going, actually, I've done that too, or that's why I don't travel full time, or all the rest of it. And actually, I think there is a real change in our kind of attitude to each other, and the importance of the people, not just the race car. I think there is always going to be this drive to win, and I think there may be a limitation. I've talked to people about putting in whether they want to put in, training schemes and well-being initiatives. And I think if you asked most engineers at the moment, would you like £20 a month to be spent on mindfulness classes for you all, or you could have that in your car budget? I think most of them would still say, spend it on the car, don't worry about me, I'll be fine. But I think there is more kind of appreciation for kind of supporting each other, motivating each other, and going through those hard times together, and accepting people, whether they cry or they don't cry, or they shout or they just go into themselves. I think we are a little bit more open about that now.
So Alejandro, how do you deal with it? Because I heard a very eminent medical professor the other night on BBC saying perfection is a destroyer of good, making the point that so often we strive for perfection, which is probably something you're trying to do all the time with your team, but sometimes we either have to accept, as Ella's just said, it doesn't work. We have to accept we're going to be number 18 or number 22, or sometimes it's good, but it's not quite what our expectation was, and we miss the opportunity to applaud ourselves for at least getting it good. How do you deal with that?
Well, I guess the philosophy that we take, it could be a bit different. We might feel the same as we would want in industry, of just having infinite budget and being able to spend it all in the car, but we try to push for a different philosophy by the fact that we're students and we haven't even graduated. Because taking you to a couple of questions back, like how do you deal with failure, it's actually something that we are massively benefited by, because if you think about it, we're shaping people. I am shaping myself within the team, and it's the same with a lot of our students. And we know that when we go out to our job interviews, and it happened to me and it happened to everyone, on your cover letter, you want to put the challenges that you faced, you want to put the things that went wrong and how you reacted to them, because that is how you measure character. And I think many of the people that work in Formula One and many of the people that work in our team, they one day want to end up in Formula One or in high performance racing. And a quality that is built in the people that work in this environment is character. And you only build this through reacting to challenges and how reactive your team is. So it's really by failure and by challenging times that you actually develop all of this. And yes, I think in an ideal world for some people, we might, okay, let's have a massive budget by the university and let's just build the car at the best of our ability. But we wouldn't really learn that much. We wouldn't really learn how to think outside the box and have business development teams to get sponsorship, to go and connect with companies to support our project. There's so many limitations that we wouldn't be able to develop by. So it's a bit of the other side of the coin that we really want to be involved with. And particularly in this year, like 2020, initially we came with we sort of came with a mindset that was like, okay, this year is just going to be impossible. It's going to be challenging. We're never going to make it. We can't even go to campus at the full of our ability. But we sort of realized, and we all said, well, at the end of the year, we're all going to go to job interviews. We're all going to be asked the same question. Yes, 2020 was bad, but what did you do about it? How did you react to it? What decisions did you make? What changes did you make? How did you think outside the box to just make it work? And I think we all ended up being, well, fair enough. I want to be part of this year now, because every year had it in one way, but we had it in our own special way. We had it with our own limitations, that it sort of gave us the opportunity to show different skills from ourselves, different abilities to basically make this car work. And we're doing that. And I guess even now, last week, okay, yeah, a new lockdown is implemented, but what are we going to do about it? How are we going to think outside the box to make it work? And it's sort of like what we're doing every day. And these are the things that are going in our cover letter. And these are the conversations that we're going to build in our interview rooms. And these are the things that are building the character that one day is going to show that we're good people to work in high performance teams.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I mean, Britt, Anne, I don't know whether you've got any comments you want to make, but
well, I think about the I think it's a very sophisticated process. Obviously, engineering it is, and also your process of deliberately working as teams and reviewing it and seeing what works effectively and what doesn't. And I suppose just to say, that's also what all of our experience and the theory suggests, is that people who continuously look at performance of their own, by the way, you know, individually, and are willing to look at the process of how things are done. I mean, from an engineering background, obviously you're very used to doing that, aren't you? But applying that to the team and to the human side of it, I think is, from my perspective, is what would distinguish people excellent. I mean, I don't know all the research around that specifically in your area, but intuitively, and with the people I work with and coach, the people who are most successful in leadership are people who can continuously evaluate what they're doing well and be willing to take feedback and start the next day thinking about what they might be able to do differently. And that's an interdependent process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and building on that, I think the other thing is the ability to have some form of perspective taking. When Ella talked about, you know your expectations, know your limitations. I guess when you apply that to racing, you have to be aware that you're already in a top performing team, where sometimes the difference between the first place and the 8th place is like a 1/10 of a second or something. This shows my lack in math skills, but it's, you know, what I mean is the margins are minute. So you're already at, you know, just skirting perfection. And that must be difficult if you get too much focused on being perfect. So the ability to take a step back and say, right, well, there are other aspects that we've done really well. And there are, by the way, even other aspects of my life that have nothing to do with racing, I think is an ability that helps you to be resilient as well.
Yeah. So as we always do to round off these conversations, I'm going to put Ella and Alejandro on the spot here. If you're both young leaders, if you sort of jumping forward a few years, looking back, and you were to bump into the next generation coming through, whatever that is, Generation ZZ or something, what one tip would you give them in terms of leadership? That, you know, what would you say, if nothing else, just focus on, just remind yourself all the time about this, or focus on just sort of pinching yourself and saying, remember, you need to do this. What would it be?
I think there's 2 things that come to mind for me. One is be yourself, because everybody else is already taken. Don't be afraid of being yourself, because that, you know, that diversity is what makes this innovation happen. And I think the other thing is you don't have to wait until you get to a certain point before you're a leader. You know, I think I thought that someone would come down, and maybe this is because of the age that I went to school and we were the first generation to get a certificate for everything. But I thought someone would come down and say, Ella, you are now a leader. And that's not true. Alejandro is already a leader. You know, you can be a leader all the time for the students that are coming up behind you, the graduates that are at the company, for peers that have joined a few weeks after you. And yeah, you know, I think that the minute I heard somebody say that, I actually thought, yeah, you're right, that's really important to show those qualities all the time.
Great. And so last word to you, Alejandro, you know, calling in from Mexico, 3 o'clock in the morning, give it to us. You know, what's your top tip?
So probably, again, it's 2 main things. And the first one, it really echoes what Ella mentioned, is that leadership is not a position. Leadership is a choice. And we have people in every single year, from first year to masters. And we really want to grow the culture in which we are all leaders. We all see and value the impact of leadership in industries like motorsport, engineering, or, if I'm honest, any sort of industry is wanting leaders nowadays. And then the second one is that part of leadership, and part of my role, is not just looking at the product, is not just looking at what we're building or what we're making, it's looking at the people that are doing so. I myself, as a leader, don't see myself responsible for every single bolt and panel in the car. I see myself responsible for every person in the car. And sometimes what I see as a result of this is, if I take care of my people, if I take care of the leaders in my team, they will take care of the car. And it's a bit of a knock-on effect that you can see happening, because it's it's a lot about what Anne mentions as well. It's not just striving for absolute technical perfection, but it's also seeing how the people in your team perform, how they are feeling, if they need anything. That is part of being a leader. And when you build a strong environment with the minds in your group of people in a comfortable environment in which they can work, then they will have the environment to make a brilliant piece of engineering.
Great. Well, on that very positive note, can I thank both of you for joining us today. It's been lovely and to kicking off 2021. So I hope whatever your plans are for 2021, they come to fruition and you find even more interesting and innovative ways of bringing that about. It's super. Thank you so much. We've got joining us next week, Nadia Huben from Human Rights in the Picture in Europe. She's a sort of human rights lawyer, and she's going to be joining us. So if you've got time next Friday, join us for that conversation. But in the meantime, Alejandro, good luck. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully you get back to Oxford Brookes safely at some point in the near future. Ella, thank you so much for joining us as well. And Anne and Britt, see you around next time. Okay, thank you all very much indeed.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, and good luck. Happy New Year.
And a very happy New Year to you too.